Setbacks don't just slow you down, they break you if you let them. But what no one tells you is this: every setback is fuel, not because it feels good, but because it forces you to choose. Hide from the lesson or become someone strong enough to use it. The hardest part of a setback is not the loss itself, not the numbers, not the missed outcome, not the thing that didn't happen. The hardest part is what comes after, in the quiet, when the dust settles and you are left sitting with yourself. No more distractions, no more momentum, no more proof to hold on to, because that's when the real pain starts to rise. Not from the world outside you, but from the voice inside your head, asking questions you don't want to answer. Not, why did this happen? But, what if this says something about who I am? That's the moment no one talks about, because failure doesn't just sting. It begins to reshape your identity from the inside out. Not all at once, slowly, quietly. It makes you question the version of you that had the courage to believe in something. It makes you question whenever your effort ever really mattered. And over time, if you are not careful, it begins to rewrite the way you see yourself. Not as someone who tried and learned, but as someone who tried and should have known better. And that shift, that slow, quiet erosion of belief, is where progress truly dies. Not on the surface, not in your work, not in your plans, but deep in your spine, in your language, in the way you start to say things like, maybe now is not the time, or maybe I will wait till I'm more prepared, or worse, maybe I'm just not the type. Setbacks, if left unchallenged, don't just delay your growth, they drain your identity, they poison the confidence that got you moving in the first place. And if you let them speak long enough, you start shrinking to fit the failure you never fully proceed. That's a quiet moment after the damage has been done, after the plan fell apart, the goal slipped away, the opportunity passed, where you are faced with a decision so subtle you almost don't notice it. You can continue telling yourself that this setback is a sign that you were wrong to try, that you aimed too high, that life is rigged against you. Or you can choose something harder, something less dramatic, but infinitely more powerful. You can decide to look at what happened not as a failure, but as feedback. And this is where everything starts to shift, not externally, but internally. Because the setback itself was never your enemy. It wasn't the fall that held you back. It was the meaning you give to the fall. You told yourself it meant you weren't good enough, that your timing was off, that your dream was too big for someone like you. And the longer you let that story sit in your system, the more it becomes your identity. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. But the true is simpler and heavier and more useful. The true is that setbacks are the curriculum for greatness. They are the moments life gives you to decide what kind of person you are going to be now, when the comfort has been stripped away. They are not interrupts to your growth. They are your growth. And the ones who really rise, are not the ones who avoid setbacks. They are the ones who study them. They write down what went wrong. They named the emotion. They replay the moment not to value, but to harvest. Because they understand something most people never learn. The wisdom you want is hidden inside the experience you are still trying to forget. So, the question becomes this: are you brave enough to go back into the failure, not to reveal it, but to learn from it? Are you willing to treat your pain like raw material instead of reason to stop trying? Because if you are, then you have already started winning. Not because you avoided setbacks, but because you refuse to waste it. So, what's the process of using your setbacks as a fuel? Step 1 is silent, not distractions, not denial, not positivity, just silent. The kind where you sit with what happened long enough to hear what it's actually trying to tell you. Not the story of your ego made up, not the shame spiral, the truth. Because until you hear that actual lessons, you will keep revealing the same failure in different costumes, wondering why things never change to me, why life is so unfair. So, step 2 is review, not with judgment, but with curiosity. What decision led here? What assumptions did you make? What signs did you ignore? What part of you still hurts? And what is that pain trying to protect? Step 3 is disarm the shame. Because shame keeps you stuck in the moment where it all went wrong. And as long as you believe that this failure says something about your worth, you will keep trying to fix yourself instead of fixing the process. So, write it down, speak it out, call it what it is. Because the shame shrinks in the moment you name it without fear. Step 4. Extract. Take what works and leave the rest. Every setbacks carried raw data, and the ones who rise faster are the ones who learn faster. Not because they avoid pain, but because they study it. The future is built by the version of you willing to ask better questions about what just happened. Step 5 is the most important. Move. Not in the same direction, not in denial, but with new clarity, new focus, new respect for what this moment gave you. You don't overcome the past by running from it. You overcome it by walking forward with the strength it gave you. So, what will happen if you will think about setbacks as a problem instead of lesson? Close your eyes and imagine this. You didn't quit loudly. You didn't make a dramatic exit or announce you were done chasing growth. No, it happened quietly, in moments so small you barely noticed them at the time. It started with hesitation, with one more break before you tried again, one more week to regroup, one more plan you swore you would come back to, and little by little you stopped showing up, not just to your work, but to yourself. The ambition was still there, the language was still in your mouth, but the fire was gone. What no one saw was that your setbacks hadn't just kicked you down, it had emptied you out. And because you never processed the pain, because you never turned around to ask what that failure was trying to teach you, you start searching for ways to avoid it altogether. Not just the failure, but the memory of it. And that's when the pattern began. You stopped chasing your goals and started chasing numbing. You told yourself you were taking time to heal, but really you were building rituals around distractions. You stopped building your future and started escaping from your present. And what started as a coping mechanism, just a few minutes here, just a bit of stimulation to take the edge off, slowly grew into something that began to own you. Okay. So now, let's back and let's imagine a different story. It didn't begin with confidence or clarity or even belief. It began with the same place where everything had once quietly fallen apart. Inside the long, private hours where you used to reach for comfort instead of confronting what was underneath. Inside the familiar loops that once helped you forget how far you had dried from your purpose. But this time, instead of following the circle, instead of numbing the silence, instead of escaping the weight, you stayed. You allowed yourself to feel the discomfort you would be running from for years. You let the shame rise. You let the loneliness speak. You let the boredom stretch out into something you no longer needed to escape. And in that moment, without applause, without a plan, without a breakthrough, you made a choice. I will not abandon myself again. And that decision, though it looked invisible at the surface, was the beginning of your return. Not a return to perfection, not the version of you that never fell, but a return to your spine, to your integrity, to your strength that only comes where you face the pain and say, "You don't scare me anymore." From that moment on, things didn't magically get easier, but they got real. You began moving from a place that was no longer filled by guilty, but by true. You stopped chasing clear slates and started building better patterns, slowly, imperfectly, but fully awake. You start recognizing that the setbacks wasn't meant to punish you, but to open something inside you that I would never imagine in comfort. And yes, it took time. You fell short. You felt strapped. There were moments you slipped back into the old rhythm, the numbing, the autopilot habits that felt promise quick release. But even then, even in those moments, you didn't fall into despair. You knew the difference now. You had tasted your own strength, and you remembered that forward isn't about being perfect every day. It's about refusing to disappear, just because progress isn't linear. So, you kept choosing yourself over and over, quietly, especially when it was hard. You replaced your rituals of escaping with routines of rebuilding. You rewrite your system, not with hype, but with honesty. You create space for stillnesses, for discomfort, for vision. And, without even noticing it, you start walking differently. Not as someone trying to earn their worth back, but as someone who finally remembered it had never left. So, remember, every setbacks hold a choice. Not just the choice to keep going, but the choice to becoming new because of it. Most people don't fail because of the pain. They fail because they keep running from what the pain is trying to teach them. The setbacks isn't the enemy, it's the mirror. It shows you who you are when it's not easy, when there is no momentum, when it hurts. And the version of you who can rise inside that space, that's the version who becomes unstoppable. So, don't waste the fall. Don't nab the lessons. Don't shrink to protect your comfort. Let it shape you. Let it sharpen you. Let it break what needs to breaking. So, you can finally review what's real. And if this hits something in you, if this felt like a voice you haven't heard for a long time, don't let it slip from your mind. Like, share, subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but for the version of you who's finally ready to rise.